Now is the time. A time you'll look back on. A time you adopt as inspiration. You will recollect this time. This moment, right now. Motivate yourself towards success. Overcome. Take over. The time is now.
Back.
We are back again. Welcome everyone to Loaded Mag NUFC away days. We are back for another match preview, and look, delighted to have the main man Martin with us. How you doing, fella?
I'm all good, pal. All good. As usual, thanks to Chris for not being available. So I get my little stint. So yeah, all good, pal. All good. Weather's been good. Kids are fine. Much like you. Yeah, so good. Looking forward to a good chat with Marlon. Haven't met. We've just met behind the scenes. So yeah, looking forward to having a good chat about Newcastle v Spurs this coming Sunday. And get Marlon's view on it and see who takes the step towards cementing the top four, mate. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Definitely. You talked about the Sunday. What's your feelings? How are you feeling going into Sunday? We talked before we came on that it was a big game, but just in general, what are your initial thoughts going into the game?
I think it's kind of like what we said to Marlon. I don't think it's season defining, but I think it makes them. Whichever side wins, if it's one or other, obviously, I think it's going to be us. I'm sure Marlon thinks it's going to be them. But I think it does really kind of put you in pole position, let's say. I think Marlon said, it kind of cements that spot. But look, I don't think it'll happen, but Liverpool seem to be coming into form. But I think the key thing for me is the likes of Spurs and a couple of others. They've all kind of got to play a lot of the others around them, whereas we don't. Spurs is really the big one for us. We've got, out of that 8 games, we've got 5 at home and 3 away. So I think I'm quite comfortable with that. I think, look, we know the threat that Spurs bring, with Kane and Son. Son started scoring again, unluckily for us. But I think we've enough to manage them. I think we've got a better midfield. I think we've got more strength in depth. I think we're better defensively. I think Spurs can leak goals. So yeah, I'm feeling quietly confident. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, look, we're going to get into it because it's a evenly balanced game going into it, because I think what we talked about with Marlon before on air. And look, I'll leave our conversation for when Marlon comes on. But firstly, welcome to everyone in the chat. So many already in here. Great to see you all. Paul Gallant, welcome in the channel. Connie Nielsen, welcome in. Lisa Mole, resident spanner, hope you're well. Already super active in the chat, which is great to see. Jamie, great to see you become a member as well. Welcome into the chat tonight. Lots of others. Cole, brilliant Cole, great to see you last night and good to see you in again. Joy the Team for Life. Gary Milliken, great to have you in there. Michael Palmer, always flying in with the questions already. Tom Dixon with the number of questions as well. Welcome in, and many, many more. Welcome to the chat. To coin a phrase, just stuck in there in the last few seconds. But look, as always, away days is about getting the opposition's point of view. And from my perspective, and I think it was it was Chris that was on last time. It was really, really, really good chat last time with Marlon, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back in. So from his podcast, South View, come on, you Spurs, we have Marlon coming back in. Welcome in, Marlon. How are you, my man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back. That's all I gotta say. After the response I got last time, I was overwhelmed, but now I'm glad to be back. I loved talking to you guys last time, and yeah, as I said last time, I predicted it spot on what happened, and I told you lot would be us. So, so I'm back at it. I'm back at it. A bit more depressed than I was last time, but hopefully I'll try and keep as positive as I can about Spurs, but I don't think I will.
Look, let's get the sort of negatives out of the way. I'm just going to ask you outright, what is going on at Tottenham Hotspur? Like, what is the situation from a fan's perspective? Is as outsiders as Newcastle fans? What the hell is going on there at this moment in time?
So I think a lot of these problems have been for a while, but what's happened now is that after Conte's comments against Southampton, he has kind of exposed Spurs to the world and basically said exactly what's going on behind closed doors. And the problem we've got now, especially as our fan base, we're very split. Like, at least with Mike Ashley, majority of Newcastle fans wanted him gone, right?
Yeah.
Daniel Levy is just an upgrade on Mike Ashley with a bit more success, right? And it's a weird thing to say, but you'll have some people going, look where he's taken the club. But a lot of us fans who want football and enjoy football and love football won't like Daniel Levy. He's exploiting every bit out of the club. But what's happened since Pochettino is that it's exposed what he's trying to do. He's, we haven't won anything. Like, we get involved in these top six discussions, but every of the other clubs, what do they throw at us? No trophy, no trophy, no trophy. Every time there's a big game, we crumble. We've always crumbled in big games. Champions League finals, semi-finals, we've always crumbled. You look at the Southampton game, we were ready to go third. We were ready just to leapfrog you that day. As soon as the pressure came on, look what happened. Yes, a VAR decision went against us, but it happens in football. But the fact we allowed, let's look at it like this. Southampton, Bournemouth, and I forgot who the other team was, have all struggled for goals this season. All three of them have scored 6 past Spurs. It just shows you where our problems lie. And we shouted out about our problems at the beginning of the season. We told, every fan channel you would have gone for Spurs, would have told you what our problem was. Even though a lot of us said, we won the transfer window, we all said our defence is going to cause us a lot of issues this season. And exactly that. We've lost 10 games. And the fact we're even fighting for top 4, it just shows you how poor the rest of the Premier League's been for us. Like, we should be nowhere near top 4. This conversation right now shouldn't be about Champions League. It should be about Newcastle cementing their place and Spurs should be halfway. They should be down there with Chelsea. That is how bad the season is. But
you know what? I want to get Mark's thoughts on this, but you've just made a point that I think I mentioned last night on last night's show on the Mag NEFC, and I said the way Spurs have gone on this season, why are they not down with Chelsea? Because the way Chelsea's decline's been this season, Tottenham's has equally been as bad. And we'll look at the league table at the moment and just still within it. And I can't for the life of me think how you are still in it. But like, Mark, come in on this, because what's your assessment of Spurs, and in particular what Marlon said about their sort of downfall this season?
I think if you're a Spurs fan, the frustration for me would be just the inconsistency. In that you've got, in my opinion, a pretty good squad. You've got good players. You've had some of the top managers, and for whatever reason, success just doesn't come. And when I look at it as an outsider, as an NUFC fan or an outsider looking in, I look at it and I kind of go, everything kind of stems back to Daniel Levy for me. It's kind of like, he's had Poch, he's had Mourinho, two of the best managers in the world, and still with that squad of players, Antonio Conte, just something doesn't click. Something just doesn't. It doesn't matter who comes in. Something just doesn't click. And the only denominator that I can keep putting back to that is Levy.
Well, it's quite weird that you say that, because if other fans can see it, but our fan base can't see it, our fan base will not blame. I'm going to throw this out there. It's our season ticket holders. Our season ticket holders, right? Let's take the abuse that happened with Sanchez last weekend, right? That's frustration with how the club's being run, but they still won't lay the blame at Levy's door, because they feel like the ENIC out brigade is a very negative, and they don't want to be associated with that. So they won't go against Levy and anything he does. But it's weird just hearing you say that and going, actually, other clubs can see what's going on with Daniel Levy. Why can't we? And that's where we're stuck in at the moment. And I don't know if anyone has seen, but Daniel Levy yesterday, the video came out on YouTube yesterday, Cambridge Union, if anyone wants to go see, Daniel Levy comes out and speaks. He doesn't speak, he doesn't do interviews, he doesn't do things like that, but he came out and done an interview for Cambridge. And it's actually telling, for us Spurs fans that don't like him, it's nothing's changed. But for everyone else, you can see Spurs was an investment, football is secondary. And just listen to some of the answers that he gives, and you have to, and you go, this is what Spurs fans have to put up with. But it's the way it is. You know, until the rest of the fans get on board, it's not going to change. And we'll be having this conversation in 18 months and 2 years, and it will still be the same with Spurs.
Yeah, I think the thing, you know, if you take the Levy piece aside, I think, you know, look, we had the same, we'd 14 years with Mike Ashley, so you know, you don't need to tell us about bad owners and being bled dry. You know, we've seen some horrible times. You know, I'm a little bit older than the fella with the yellow t-shirt on above me there. So I've seen even worse times than him, but I've also seen some good times. But again, that thing for me, if I look at the Spurs team, you know, I look at this weekend, I go, okay, you know, Son and Kane worry me. You know, I like Perisic. You know, when me and Pete and the guys were talking about this the other night, we kind of seen the Spurs team and the possibilities. I kind of said, you know what, Kulusevski worries me. I think he's a really, really good player. You know, he could cause us a problem down that side against Dan Burn. And, you know, we'll get into all the formations and stuff. But when I look at the opposite end and I look at, you know, from Lloris, I look at the likes of Eric Dyer, I look at that defense and I think of Wilson, Isaac, Joelinton, Bruno, you know, Longstaff, and, you know, Gordon, Almiron. I think like we can definitely get at that back four, and I think we've got, you know, more in that middle. And I think defensively, you know, somebody put in the chat there, you know, Spurs grind out more wins, whereas Newcastle have had a few more draws. Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah. You know, there's a couple of 1-0s in there and stuff like that. But I think that expectation, you know, that Spurs are there or thereabouts, and you know, it's not just Spurs, but as a Newcastle fan, you look at that and you talk about this season's not being the best, and Arsenal are where they are, and Liverpool should be there, and Chelsea should be there. We look at that and go, no, man, you shouldn't, because that's just entitlement. Just because you've always been there doesn't mean you should be this season. So for me, you know, this whole talk, you see Liverpool talking about, well, if we don't make Champions League with Chelsea, or we don't make this, you know, we should get it because we've always been there. No, man, you've got to earn it. You've got to earn it. Mm-hmm. Listen, we may not, you know, we're in part of a project where we're probably, and you know, Pete will come in on this, we're probably 18 months ahead of where we thought we were ever going to be. You know, if you'd have given me the start of the season and we talked about it on Loaded Mag, I would have said, do you know what? I'll take a top 10 finish, consolidate again, and we go again next season. You know, instead of sitting worrying about relegation, you know, we're on shows and we're now, you know, Newcastle fans are now worried about not finishing top 4. You're kind of going, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't know what to do anymore. So it's, yeah, I think there's a few reasons, but I think the big key for me is Daniel Levy. I just don't. It's kind of like, I tell you the easiest way I would liken it to. It's kind of like Man United, and I've said this a few times with the whole Ferguson effect. Any kind of manager coming in after Ferguson has really struggled, because it's kind of like he still walks the halls, if you get me. And it's like, you know, like David Moyes is a pretty good manager. Mourinho went there, you know, still won things, but nobody's really had that success of titles and the other stuff, because you got this guy who was such a fixture in the background walking the halls. And I think that, for me, is what I think has happened, is what happens at Spurs, You get these really good managers, really good players, but at the top, you've got this guy who comes and sits with the managers and goes, "Here's what I think you should do."
Yeah.
And I think that's what goes wrong for me. That's just my feel on it.
What do you think about that, Marlon? You were kind of nodding away. Are you in agreement with what Martin said?
No, and it's definitely true. I think the cult, like when I try and say the culture of the club is driven by the board, and I think you could just go watch the Amazon documentary and just see what the expectation is, right? And even if you go and watch this Cambridge Union thing, all he mentions is about making European football and Champions League. Those are the two most important. That's where where the money's generated. And that's what the players are told. They're told, go make Champions League. Nothing else is really that important. So at the end of the day, if the players are not expected to go do anything else, they're not going to maintain. That's why we're so wish-washy, because we don't have to win all the games. We're not expected to, the FA Cup against Sheffield United. We should be going out to Sheffield United. Why do we need Harry Kane when we've got a £60 million striker up front? This is the stuff that you kind of go, until the board change or until Daniel Levy kind of steps aside, Spurs will be the same constantly for the next 10 years, 30 years. At the end of the day, he's the longest serving chairman in a business. This is not just football, in a business, right? Full stop. I think he's second most in a business. That's way too long. And I remember there was a guy on the radio that said, if you're doing the same job for 20 years, the exact same job, no matter what industry you're in, you end up getting bored and you end up probably making mistakes because there's no promotion, there's no demotion. You're going to get bored. And that's exactly what's happening at Spurs. And you can kind of see it where he's the mistakes we're making in transfers is becoming more frequent. The whole Fabio Paratici today and stuff like that. Like, how have you not done your due diligence in the first place to employ a man who, when you read a lot of articles saying he was warned, but yet look, and another thing that goes against him. But as most other Spurs fans say, the training ground's nice, the stadium's nice. What more do you want?
But what you want is a successful team that are looking like they're going to be winning trophies, and that's something at the moment, unfortunately for Tottenham, is not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon.
Well, the weirdest thing is that we're not even expecting trophies now. I think it's got to that point where we go, do you know what? We don't care about trophies. Just go and play entertaining football. That's all we want now. We don't even care about it.
Marlon, shouldn't you be though? Because let's face it, like over the last 10 years, you have now been associated with that traditional big six. So that traditional big six are meant to be that big club that are fighting for trophies. Now, you saying now, after that 10 years plus, that you're not even expecting trophies, like that doesn't seem right. It genuinely doesn't.
But this is what the club have done to us fans, and this is what a lot of people won't admit. But we have come to the realization under this ownership, it's never going to be about trophies. Because if you look at, let's take the last 3 years, we have been going out to lower league clubs in FA Cups, League Cups. We're not even going out to the big sides anymore like we were, right? When you take the first 10 years, I think we'll get knocked out by Man Uniteds, the Chelseas and stuff like that. We just weren't at that level. But now we're not even there. We're getting knocked out by Sheffield Uniteds, Norwiches and stuff like that. So we've come to realization there just must be something wrong with the way the club's being run or the mentality of the club. So you know what? If 21 years now, one trophy, right? And the guy that got us the trophy nearly got us relegated the season after. So we're kind of in the scenario, if you just give us entertaining football, we'll stop moaning and we'll carry on. But I think with the top six conversation, you're absolutely correct. I think the thing that everyone has to realize with Spurs, we didn't expect to be in these conversations to begin with. We got invited, if that makes some sort of sense. We only got invited because we broke it up, right? And then it was those clubs that then started throwing, you ain't winning trophies, you ain't doing this, you ain't doing that. And I'm going to say this to you, look, the same, if you guys end up breaking the top six in the next 3 or 4 years and say you don't win anything, the same label's going to get thrown at you guys. And you'll start to see, actually, it's the top 5 sides that will start labeling you, right? And that's the problem. If Manchester City broke it and they didn't win anything, The only thing that Man United fans can really throw at them now is Champions League. That's the big thing for Manchester City. So everyone gets thrown at something. But yeah, with Liverpool, Man United, and Arsenal, they will always throw trophies in your face, and that's when it becomes a thing. Well, and with Chelsea, they, you go, what's happening to Chelsea now? They've been spoilt for the last 20 years. Right, so this is the Chelsea. If anyone can remember Chelsea before Roman, this is the Chelsea we all remember, mid-table and everything like that. So, and I think everyone's just forgot it because they've been so long in that top 4 kind of conversation.
You are saying absolute facts, Marlon, because anyone that supported Newcastle in the 90s, Mark would have been there. Many in the chat would have been supporting Newcastle through the 90s into the early 2000s. I'll be honest with you. I saw Chelsea spend millions and millions on kind of players from Italy that were virgin on retiring and all the rest of it, splashing all this cash and still finishing mid-table every season. And they were doing nothing. They were doing absolutely nothing. The times they would turn up is maybe in an FA Cup. They'd win an FA Cup here and there, and that would justify their spending to continue doing it. But in the league, they were doing nothing. Yeah. They would beat the big teams on the odd occasion. So they'd beat the odd Man United on the odd occasion, or they'd beat the Arsenal on the odd occasion. But they'd be losing to Tom, Dick, and Harry. Yeah. Most weeks, like that. That's what I grew up seeing. Mark, were you the same?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think back to some of those teams. I was lucky enough to see, some really good people coming through. Like I was there. I can remember Gazza's first game. I remember, Keegan, Waddle, Beardsley, some real good stuff. And same with Spurs teams, same with Chelsea teams. I remember going away with Newcastle at Chelsea, in what was the old Shed End, before it was even a full-on stadium, and seeing the likes of Kerry Dixon play. So all those teams, we've all had that pedigree. But again, it's just, that top 6 side, we've just never had that. As you said, Marlon, we've never had that trophy winning spell. Yeah. Despite those, probably our best attempt was, we were leading the Premiership, and obviously Ferguson played his mind games, and Keegan blew his lot. That's about as close as we came. But I think for me, as I said before, it's just that entitlement. And I think you made a really good point, Marlon, which is, Spurs are only kind of where they are because the league is what it is this year. Yeah. And I think it's something we've said. That Champions League, we probably didn't think. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let me feel happy about that one, because I didn't know the second part that Craig Lees.
It's true. So what happened at the time? He came over and he basically said he was a Spurs fan. It was actually known that he was an actual Spurs fan. But the problem is, at the time, ENIC had only just taken over Spurs, and they weren't willing to sell. I think they'd only been there 2 or 3 years, and this is where they are now, and how they built the club is what they wanted all along. And that's the reason why we never got bought. But yeah, our history could have been so different if that happened.
Ended probably would have been the same.
Yeah, probably.
Possibly.
Yeah. I told you Mark wouldn't let you off lightly. I told you.
No, I just mean the whole Abramovich thing. Well, I think that league thing is weird. Like if you look at the Newcastle piece, as I said, we probably hadn't even thought about Champions League, but now we're in that spot and we're talking about, listen, we're playing Spurs on Sunday, and trying to cement that 3rd and 4th spot. Kind of really at the minute we're vying with yourselves and probably Man United. But it's only, I think for us, it's only purely like that at the minute. Yeah, we've played some good games. We've probably had way too many draws. If we'd have got maybe 5 more wins and draws, we could have been sitting even further up, and that Champions League would have been secured. But I think it's only like it is because, as you said, like Liverpool, Chelsea, some of the others have been so bad. Yeah. And I don't think you'll see another season the same as this. Yeah. So for us, and Spurs, because I think Man United have got their own distractions, Rashford possibly out and a couple of others and different bits and pieces. you know, I'd love to see Newcastle and Spurs hit that top 4 and knock the others out. But I don't think we're not going to get another season like this. So for us, it's kind of nail it now or never at the minute for us.
It's very strange you say that, because the only other season, like when we were trying to do the same, the only other season where it happened to us was the year Leicester won it. And you have to remember, every club that season, every top 4 club or top 5, including City, had bad seasons. The only 2 that cemented, like, it was us and Leicester. But that was the season we first got the Champions League under Poch, and then we went on that run where we got it 5 years on a bounce. So yeah, for you guys, if you guys can get it this year, then it's a building block. And I think that's what we're worried about with Newcastle right now, is if you get Champions League this year, the players that you'll be able to attract and everything with Champions League football goes up a notch. The only problem that you have to be careful of, and which Spurs didn't do, is making sure you buy the right talent, and for the manager, and if it's not the right talent, making sure that when they are being bought, that you look after them when they get to the club. And I see that with Newcastle, where Spurs, we don't do that. We don't look after our players. You look at the big signings we've made and we kind of go, oh, go defend for yourself. But it's not like that. You have to make sure that your manager is in place and it's the players he wants. Because you look at your back 4, Dan Burn, Fabian Shaw. There were 2 players that most people have gone, I ain't looking at them. But you've got a manager that believes in them. You've got a manager that's working with them. And with Botman thrown in there and Trippier, who are doing like wonders, you've got a solid defence and Nick Pope behind them. But if Dan Burn would have signed for Spurs, I tell you now, there would have been riots. But just look what you guys have done. That's the thing. You have to sign the right players for the right manager. Otherwise, it's never going to work. And that's exactly what's happened with Newcastle this year. Well, partly when January last year and then built onto this year. But yeah, what Newcastle have done, I think a lot of us outside of Newcastle have been thinking, oh my God, they haven't gone and spent millions. They've gone and spent what they needed and done well with it. That's what it's about. And hopefully that's what your owners will continue to do.
Yeah, look, that is the key. And I think the difference is that, and I think Mark's alluded to it as well, these owners aren't going to mess around. If we get the opportunity to Champions League football, they're going to financially back us to ensure that this is not just a one-off. However, if we don't get it this year, then we will continue to build. It's not the end of the world, but what it does, it sets us on kind of a two-year jump, in my opinion. I think a lot of Newcastle fans agree that it almost sets us on a 2-year jump of where we expect it to be if we get Champions League football, and we're so close now. I think it'd be really hard for a lot of fans to take if we didn't get it. We wouldn't blame anybody. There'd be no finger pointing. It wouldn't be any like that. You look at the likes of, even some section of the Tottenham fans and Liverpool fans and Chelsea fans. They're all kind of pointing fingers of where it's gone wrong, of why they might not get Champions League football. You won't get any of that with Newcastle. There won't be no questions with Eddie Howe and all the rest of it. In the future, that might be a different conversation. But right now, it's not. And it's all part of that building process. And I just think getting it now would actually propel Eddie Howe as a manager to the next level. Yeah. But also, I think it will propel Newcastle to the next level because we've got the financial backing to put
I think you're right, Pete. Mike Pomar makes a really good point there. The importance for Champions League is huge. Opens up FFP, attracts the next level of player, gives the owners the recognition that they're looking for, and of course, it accelerates the project. And I think he's 100% nailed on there, because I think if you're PIF, you're Yasser and you're sat over in Saudi Arabia, and you're looking at that league table and you're going, okay, well, we need to invest again in the summer. We're doing the training ground where, we don't want to go too mad. We're, as Marlon said, we're doing it cleverly. We're not busting, FFP, because we know, because of the deal and because of who bought Newcastle, that it's being looked at by, every other club, and it's being looked at by the Premier League, and it's being, we can't put a foot wrong, but it does accelerate that deal. But I just imagine Piffer kind of sitting there in the background going, oh man, it's so close. And I think, they strike me as the kind of organization that are looking at that and going, do you know what? If we get this, yes, it accelerates us, but you know what? We're going to go for it if we get it, But I still think they'll do it wisely. That'll be the difference, I think.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think you're absolutely spot on. Wouldn't surprise me if we see our chairman at the game on Sunday. Actually, kind of back in the boys. But look, we've hit the 30-minute mark. Massive thanks to everybody. If you haven't already, click that thumbs up. Click that like button, and if you're new to the channel, and there's one or two in the chat that are new to the channel, welcome. And if you're just watching and you haven't got involved in the chat, please do. But you got to click that subscribe button to do so. Mags on top, just saying hello to Master Little Green, should I say. I hope you are well and welcome to the chat tonight, as is many others. Rich, you don't need to apologize. Rich Joblin, you don't have to apologize for being late. We're just glad that you're here. Get your questions in the chat for us and Marlon as well. And look, we'll move on into our section because we've talked about the league, and the league table is there. It's finally poised at the moment. At this moment in time, Tottenham on 53 points, played 31. 7 games to go in your season. Newcastle on 56, 3 points clear, but with a game in hand, and could kind of expand that. I'll ask you just really quickly, Marlon, are you worried about the teams behind you? Obviously, we don't really want to talk about it as Newcastle fans, but Villa did put us to the sword on Saturday and have propelled themselves onto 50 points, and they're only 3 points behind you now. Brighton have got 2 games in hand on you, not to put any pressure on you, that they could potentially take you over with a couple of wins.
That's a derby nowadays, isn't it?
I think Brighton will try and make it a derby. There's no doubt about it.
That's a forced rivalry.
There you go. What are you looking at as you look at that table, Marlon? Are you looking up in terms of trying to catch, Newcastle and Newcastle United and Man U, or are you worried more so about what's below you in the table?
So I'll be honest. Look, as a fan, you're always going to look above. Obviously, Newcastle and Man United for the last couple of weeks have always been the team that we're chasing, and especially we've got you guys this week. Thursday we've got Man United, and then next week we've got Liverpool. So our next 3 games are going to define our season. So after the Liverpool game, I'll tell you whether I'm looking up or down. But with Brighton, I'm not looking at Brighton because I think their 2 games in hand are quite difficult, and they've got quite a difficult run in. And when they actually come up against a decent team, apart from Chelsea last week, like when they came up against, yes, VAR played its part, but I did say to a lot of Spurs fans that we play a certain way that Brighton won't be able to break down, and it's exactly what I said then. Exactly happened, and we just couldn't believe it. Yeah, VAR was on our side, but with Villa, where the hell have they come from? Like, they've quietly done their business, and everyone's just not. They've literally come out of nowhere. But it's down to if Ollie Watkins can stay fit and keep scoring. But I think Villa have got quite different. We've got to play Villa as well in the next few weeks.
Well, here it is. These are the fixtures. Obviously,
to be fair, if you're Spurs, you're looking at that run and you're kind of going, "That's not good."
No, our run-ins literally become so difficult because of Villa as well. Because we got this week, then we've got Palace who have suddenly gone on a run. Villa have gone on a run. Hopefully, Brentford have cemented mid-table. But by then, we could be out of everything. So it's going to be difficult. And then we've got Leeds on the last day. We'll be fighting relegation. It's one of them. But I think Liverpool. If Liverpool can keep up their away form of keep on losing, I know they beat Leeds the other night, but if they can keep up that form, I don't think they're going to make it. I think Liverpool will fall short with Brighton. Villa is a worry because if you look at their fixtures, apart from that Man United away game and the Liverpool away game, they've actually got quite a decent run in. Yeah. So you kind of go, actually, Villa could make a late charge. Our Spurs and Newcastle and even Man United looking at Villa going, actually, are you coming for us? But if they beat Brentford at the weekend, then we'll find out. If not, then, yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one because it's so poised. And that's why I kind of said earlier, if Newcastle win against us this weekend, I think it's yours to take. I think your only difficult game for you guys in this whole running will be the Arsenal home game. The rest, you look at them on paper and the way the season's going, Newcastle should be picking up the points. Yes, the Aston Villa game is an anomaly. It happens. You know, when you are fighting for Champions League, you always get that one team that turns you over and you go, oh my God, it's going to wreck our season. But no, this weekend will determine where Newcastle will finish, I think.
I look at the Liverpool. Liverpool have got the best fixtures, I would say, out of them all, but they cannot afford to drop points. This is the key to them. They cannot afford to drop anything.
A couple of draws screws them over. That they've got to win that in to get to 71.
Definitely.
Which is third or fourth spot.
Yeah, exactly. I think I genuinely believe that 71 points, which I think for us is what 5 wins. It would be like that is the benchmark for any of the teams. And Man United's fixture's not on there, but I would add them in there as well. I think 71 points is the kind of benchmark. 5 wins for us, a few more wins for the other teams. But you look at those fixtures there. You know, Brighton have got decent. They've got a difficult fixture list, albeit they do have a number at home. But you know, that someone just put in the chat that there's a potential that, other than Leeds, and you've just said it as well, Marlon, that you could drop points in any one of those games, and that's the thing that I hold on to as a Newcastle fan. You know, with you guys chasing us, is the fact that not only could we beat you on Sunday because it's at St James's Park and stretch that gap, is that you've then got Man United coming to town, and although it's at your place, it's always there's tension there because both teams need to win. Then you've got Liverpool, Palace under Hodgson is a resurge, like you said. Villa, you don't know what Villa you're going to play. You might play a Villa that might be low in confidence because they might drop some points in the next few games. So it might be a great thing. It's so up in the air. And the one thing that holds me with confidence with the Newcastle point of view, and I don't know if you agree with this, Martin, is that all of these teams around us have got to play each other. Yeah. So although we do our business, although we play Spurs, for example, after Spurs, we don't really play anyone up until Brighton, which has just been announced that it's just going to be before the Leicester game.
Yeah. That's the Thursday, and the Leicester game's gone to Sunday, I think it is.
Yeah. So after Sunday, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in which we don't play anyone around us, whereas in those 5 games, we know that some of these teams are going to drop points. So as long as we do what we need to do, we'll be there.
Let the rest battle it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from Marlon's point of view, the three games when we kind of were looking at the race for Europe, and we said that 3 away games that we've just come off the back of would, you know, because we were sitting talking. When we did the race for Europe, we were sitting talking and saying, you know, listen, this is what we think we're going to do. And we all picked out Villa. It was the one game that I sat on that show and I went, you know what? Villa really worries me. I thought we'd do all right against Brentford. I thought we'd do all right in the other games. But I was really worried about Villa because they were on 4 on the bounce. Watkins was scoring. It was at Villa Park. And to be fair, like I said on the show the other night, you know, for all those scruffy little Herberts down in Villa Park, that was their cup final that was their cup final last week. So, do you know what? Let them crack on. They enjoyed their cup final, and they probably had their little cheeseburger and their fizzy can of pop. So, you know, I'm glad they enjoyed themselves. But when I look at Spurs, that kind of next 3 that Marlon and the lads have got, they've got us, they've got Man United, they've got Liverpool. I think, as you said, they're your 3 games that kind of define what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not really until you get through that 3 and you get to Palace, you can kind of, as you said, assess and go, right, season's either on or it's off.
Yeah. No, definitely with that. And I'm just going to say this. If you lot beat Arsenal, I tell you now, we'll make sure we'll hand you top 4. We won't even care about it.
Someone snip that. Snip that.
We will hand you top 4. Just beat Arsenal at St James's Park, and Spurs fans will not care about top 4 or anything. We'll hand it to you. Right, we'll beat Man United, we'll beat Liverpool, make sure they don't come anywhere near you. And if it's 3 points towards the last day of the season, a lot of the Spurs fans will go, you know what, Newcastle can have it for just derailing Arsenal.
I do believe that we'll. I'm not saying that we'll win, but I think they'll drop
I
points.
think
At St.
they'll
James's
drop
Park.
points against us. Yeah,
I really hope so. I'll be wearing a black and white shirt that day.
To be fair, we do like ruining their season.
Oh yeah, you did wonders last year. So
Imagine if City and them are so close, and then we stuff their season again. Yeah, it won't be safe to go to. No, it'd only be safe to go to one part of North London.
Yeah,
yeah.
won't be safe going anywhere else.
No,
the fume would be huge for us fans.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
On here, that's for sure. But interesting turn of events actually, and I want to get your opinions on this. Is that lots of people in the chat have just mentioned that Man United are currently 1-0 down at Seville, which if I'm right in thinking, would put them out.
It would put them out. Yeah, it is. I don't know who scored 3-2 on aggregate.
So
scores all Sevilla so far, from what I am hearing.
Yeah, Lisa, our resident spanner or our mod, has mentioned that Maguire shockingly has had a part to play in their goal. But I asked you the question. I said to you, Mark, I mentioned to you because we were talking about the game, Man U Seville tonight, and I don't know whether it's a good thing or not if they go out. Like, is it a good thing that they go out because they'll have lost a lot of confidence, because they'll have lost a potential trophy and a potential route into the Champions League? Or do we want them to be in because we want them to continue to have more games in order for them to be more tired and potentially drop more points?
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It'll be interesting. Let's get Marlon's view on it. I think it's always nice to see them get beat, because I like to mock certain Man United fans. But yeah, I take your point as well, which is the longer they stay in and they're battling on different fronts, then that could definitely help us as well.
No, I agree. I think they need to. I'd rather them stay in the competition. Probably get knocked out in the semis, like last minute heartbreak. But if we can keep up their games for both our sakes, it's going to affect them at the weekend. They're not the best after. Well, I've not even seen it, but they're not the best when they have too many games in a row, and especially with Rashford and players now starting to get injuries because they've obviously they've won the Carabao Cup for ages. They've obviously got the FA Cup this weekend against Brighton as well. So they've got a lot of games to be getting through. And the injuries are starting to pile up on them, especially now it's the business end of the season. So I'd rather they would go through tonight. But, it's one of them. It's one of them. I'd rather them have more games. And then when it comes to actually finishing fourth, who knows? It could be us and you guys taking it, hopefully.
I think it's a big ask though for them when you got Maguire at the back.
I tell you now, until you see Eric Dyer, Maguire is a better player than Eric Dyer. So, and I've said this to Spurs fans, and Spurs fans are like, no, but we'll come and watch Eric Dyer for 30 odd games a season. Actually, you'll see him on Sunday. He doesn't tackle. He won't make one tackle. So you'll see it this Sunday.
Don't start. You're getting as excited about Sunday already.
You know what's going to happen now, don't you? Dyer's going to have a fucking stormer.
Oh no. Dyer doesn't do stormers. He'll end up having a good first half, and then he'll do something stupid and say, like, let's take the game when we played you last time. Him and Lloris were 6s and 7s and just gave it to Wilson. So, and he had such a good first half. It's typical Dyer. Eric Dyer is just one of them defenders. Some Spurs fans will praise him, but he's useless. He sums up what's wrong at Spurs. Everything that's wrong at Spurs is Eric Dyer.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Right, we'll start looking at the game in a bit more detail now. So look, it's looking like Miggy is back to full fitness, which is perfect timing because if we all remember at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he scored a fantastic goal there and effectively won us the game. So there's a potential there for him to come back and do the same. Great to have him back. Bruno's been in training this week. He didn't look right, in my opinion, against Villa, but seems to be back in as well. Wilson, if anyone's watched his Footballers Football podcast, he is banging the door down. He is desperate to start this game on Sunday, and he has previous with Tottenham Hotspur, but we've got this man here, Alexander Isak, that's desperate to continue his starting berth at Newcastle and continue his goal scoring run. I think he scored 8 in 14, which is not a bad rate of goals coming this way. And then we've got the question mark. Some people thought they heard Alan Maximin's name be mentioned in the training videos that came out yesterday. We didn't see any pictures of him, but we know what Eddie Howe's like, and that he doesn't always give his hand or show his hand of who's available and who's not. I think we'll find a little bit more out tomorrow with regards to his availability. But I did say last week that I would not be surprised if he was in the squad for Sunday in some way, shape, or form. And look, with the way our wingers played against Villa, we couldn't do we couldn't do any harm by having him in the squad, whether it's impact or starting in some way, shape, or form, because we have missed him. But just a quick fire for Tottenham's point of view. I'm going to throw a player at you, Marlon. Just give us a little snippet about where these players are at and what you think about them in general. I'm going to start with Son. Not had the best of seasons, but what's the situation with Son?
It's been a tactical issue. I think Conte had us playing a certain way that Son didn't like. And if you go look at parts of last year, he had the same problem. He had exactly the same problem. But yet he could finish on 14. I think he scored 9 or 10 goals already this season, but yet he's had a bad season. I think him and Salah, especially, I've been saying this a lot, they haven't been at their best. And I don't know if it's been a knock-on effect from last season, but it's one of those with Son. If he turns up, you know he's going to produce a goal. And this is the problem with him. He's so good, you can't drop him. And we don't have anyone to replace him, because any time we've put someone out on his side, they haven't played well either. So, but yeah, Son for me, love him to pieces. But yeah, he's not had the best of seasons. But he seems, in the last couple of weeks, we've started to see a change in form since Conte's gone. And I don't know if it's been a tactical change in the team that's made him play slightly better, because before he just couldn't find no one in a white shirt, and we were just like, what the hell's going on?
Wow. Yeah, it has been a bit of a knockoff on previous years. But like you said, his goal score record in comparison with many others in the Premier League is still pretty good regardless, which just shows the standards that he was at. This man, Kulusevski, what's the situation with him? I've seen a few Spurs fans kind of knocking him recently. What's the deal with that?
So he started off the season okay. He had a good start to the season, and then he got injured. And then the World Cup happened as soon as he was about to come back.
Right.
And then ever since the World Cup, I don't know what it's been, but he's just not been the same. The injury kicked in again. And I think it's just an injury issue. And you can blame, but the problem is when he doesn't play, we were struggling to go forward. But the fact is, now we've got Dan Juma and Richarlison, it's kind of going, and Richarlison's picked up his game a little bit. You look at Kulusevski and he's not having the same output. So we don't know. Again, I think he's having a tactical problem as well now, where we've changed again, but he's not used to these tactics. He wants Conte's tactics that he had at the beginning of last year. But because there was an argument last year, right, between Spurs and Arsenal fans, Saka or Kulusevski, right? And Kulusevski was involved, had 15 goal involvements, whether that was goals or assists, towards the end of last year, right? Kulusevski this year, all season, has been involved in 5. That's the massive drop-off, right? So you kind of go, yeah, there's something wrong there. Where you see Saka, he's come on leaps and bounds, and he's been brilliant this season for Arsenal. So it's one of them. I think it's just a quiet season. I think if we sign, because we've got to sign, I think we've got to sign Kulusevski this summer. It's kind of, I think under a better attacking manager, we'll start seeing the best of Kulusevski.
Interesting. Do you think do you genuinely think you're going to sign him there?
Yeah, he's one of them that we're guaranteed because we know what he's like. And to be honest, if we don't, we've got nothing to coming in, and we won't have nothing coming in because this is Daniel Levy and Spurs at the end of the day. So I think it's an obligation to buy if we once we made the Champions League last year, and we just put off the payment for a year.
Oh, right, okay. So it seems like what I was going to say is that if you're not in Champions League, do you think you might turn around and say, well, no?
Well, this is the other issue. It's down to him as well. So he's got to make that decision this summer to go whether he wants to stay or not. But with everything going on at Juventus as well, I don't think he's going back. And the season that he's had, I don't think he's going to get offers that he would have got probably last summer.
Yeah. No, I think that's more than fair.
I think the thing with him, I think Son. I agree with Marlon. I really like Son. If there was one player I'd take from Spurs, it would be him to put him in a Newcastle team, because I think he's kind of that player that that player you really kind of need, that can do something magical, along with like some Maximum. But I think Son just delivers that through the middle and links that forward line, and he's a player you'd love to have. I think the thing with Kulusevski for me is when he plays on that right hand side, I think he really helps balance Spurs.
Yep.
And he enables Kane to keep that more forward position. When Kulusevski doesn't play and Perisic plays, or Son goes out on that on that wide side, or he plays just in behind, Harry Kane is coming back a lot further from the games I've watched Spurs. So it's that transition, which normally when Son is in that spot or Kulusevski there, can be so quick. I think it's a lot slower, and it's those games where that free flow is not there that Spurs get caught, the likes of that Bournemouth game and ones like that. It's just that pace of transition, and I think Kulusevski brings so much balance to that front three in comparison to Perisic, and I think that flow is just better. There's more of an understanding. So,
but we've had one key injury this season that no one will really talk about, but if you're a Spurs fan and you really look into it, Bentancur getting injured for Spurs was massive, absolutely massive into the way we played. His transition from defence to attack was very key, especially in Kulu's form for what we did last year, for how we were as a team. And his injury has hit us hard. Like Skip's okay. For me, I think Skip's hit his ceiling, but for a lot of Spurs fans, they'll go, he's got a bright future and stuff, but he's just not Bentancur. Højbjerg has not been the same player since he got injured, and I'm one of them with Højbjerg. He's Marmite. He's Marmite for me, but he's not been the same player since Bentancur got injured, and I think we're suffering as a team because of that injury. And I think that's kind of what happened in the Southampton game. We didn't have him on the ball in the midfield, and it just meant Southampton could just come at us, and Conte just lost his plot. He just lost it because he just knew what the problem was, and we couldn't fix it.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Look, we've got lots of questions. We're going to come back to towards
the end of the
show, but let's look at the game now in a little bit more detail. And of course, when we look at the game, we have to start with some stats.
Evening, lads.
Magic, he appears. Good evening, Double O Stato, Splinter, whatever Bond villain.
He's already called Splinter in the chat. It's not even on 30 seconds, man. And it's gone bang. Yeah.
Dr. Doom is in there. Get your best Bond villains in the chat. Throw them in there. And that is this man right here. Welcome,
Doom.
I love it.
I was optimistic this time last week, and then it all went pear-shaped come lunch 2 o'clock.
I wonder if you'll revert back to type. But look,
never mind a wall or a fence. I'm going to barricade myself in after that result on Saturday.
Chatters, strap in. It's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. But Keith, what stats have you got for us this week then, with regards to this big game against Tottenham at Newcastle, St James's Park?
Always eventful. Newcastle Spurs as a fixture. So I've got lots of head-to-heads fixtures, and then I've got some stats on the few on the players, few on the managers, goalkeepers, and some general stats to round off. Newcastle's record against Spurs since 1993-94 in the Premier League season, played each other 55, won 23, drawn 8, lost 24. So pretty much 50-50 there, really. Always lots of goals, 150 since 93-94, with 83 to Newcastle and 87 to Spurs. Spurs have got a better defensive record as well as Newcastle in this fixture. 15 clean sheets to 6 clean sheets for Newcastle. The record at St James's Park, again, fairly similar. Since 93-94, played 27, won 12, drawn 6 and lost 9. Newcastle have had a better away record at White Hart Lane, winning 5, drawn 1 and losing 5, compared to the home record where they've only won 2, drawn 2 and lost 6 in the last 10 times they've faced each other at St James's. Newcastle's Premier League record, however, of 23 wins in this fixture is bettered only by that 24 wins against Aston Villa. We'll not mention last week, but the 4-0 earlier on in the season, that's what I'm focusing on there. Top goal scorer in this fixture in recent seasons is Harry Kane. No surprises there. 9 goals in 15 games. Kane's been involved as well in 9 goals in the past 6 Premier League meetings against Newcastle, 6 goals and 3 assists. Callum Wilson, his record against Spurs, he's got 3 and 9. Alexander Isak, I wanted to speak about him because he's scored 5 times in his past 6 Premier League games. And that's an average of a goal every 113 minutes in the Premier League, which is bettered only by Erling Haaland amongst those players who've scored 5. So that's incredible, really. It just shows you how he's came into form, Alexander Isak, in the last month and a half. Goalkeepers, Nick Pope, well, he's got 13 clean sheets compared to Hugo Lloris's 10 clean sheets for Tottenham in the Premier League this season. However, 1 clean sheet in the 10 past Premier League games for Newcastle compared to Spurs, who they've had 3 clean sheets in their last 10. So it just goes to show that this one's going to have goals in it. It's all indicating, gearing up that this will be a thriller, this one.
That's got 0-0 written all over it, hasn't it?
Certainly. Well, it's been a while since a 0-0, but Eddie Howe, his managerial record against Spurs, 12 games, although majority of them are with Bournemouth. 2 wins, 2 draws and 8 defeats. A few general stats to round off. Tottenham, they've won 4 of the past 5 Premier League meetings at Newcastle, 4 wins and a draw. Last losing at St James on the final day of the 2015-16 season, where they lost 5-1. But again, that's a long time ago now. That's pushing 7 years. Callum Wilson, he's been involved in 8 goals in his past 9 starts for Newcastle. He scored 6 and he's assisted 2. And Newcastle have won over half of the Premier League games this season when Callum Wilson started this season, 56%. 9 wins from 16 games with 1 defeat. Now, that compares to 43% when he hasn't started, 6 wins from 14 games, 3 defeats. So it shows you how influential, really, particularly the pace and the start that Newcastle make when Callum Wilson starts. 64% of Spurs Premier League goals this season have come in the second half of the season. 37 goals out of 57. That was a common complaint about Spurs early in the season, that they were going a goal or two down and then getting going in the latter parts of the game. Now that's a league high proportion for Spurs, that 37 goals out of 57. However, Newcastle, on the other hand, have conceded fewer goals after half time than any other side in the Premier League this season, with 13 goals conceded. And that rounds off the stats.
Nice one.
Some good stats there. Some some positive ones for Newcastle. Not so positive for Marlon Spurs. And I actually genuinely thought there might be some positive ones that might flip it your way slightly, but it seemed to be coming towards Newcastle, I've got to say. So I'm looking forward to Sunday. I don't know about you, Mark.
Yeah, no, I think, look, I think we've got good records against Spurs. I think, first time I've obviously met Marlon, but I would just like to mention, when Harry Kane did injure Florian Lejeune, I did take that quite personal. So yeah, hopefully there's a bit of payback. But they're always good games. I think I've been to quite a few Spurs and Newcastle games. I've been to quite a few back down when you were still in White Hart Lane. Always a great ground to go to. Always a great game. Haven't yet been to the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but hopefully one day. So I think it'll be a good game. I think both teams will go for it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I said last week we're definitely not going to get nothing against Villa. I was right. I'm more confident this weekend. I think we will be good and positive against a Tottenham team who I think will come at us, but I think we'll have a bit more in the middle of the park to be able to control it. And we're at home, so we've got the 12th man with the 52,000 black and whites in there singing their hearts out. So yeah, bring it on.
Definitely. And look, let's have a quick look at the tactics board, because as always with regards to the tactics board, it could be the difference in terms of the way in which the team's set up now. Hopefully you can see that on the screen, guys. But Marlon, I have put in the team that you sent me that you thought would potentially start the game. Does that look about right for you?
Yeah, I'll probably swap Tanganga around with Romero. I think Tanganga will play on the right. But
right. Okay, that's fine. Interestingly, you've gone for Tanganga, and Longley, who was obviously previously at Barcelona, started for you against Bournemouth. But interestingly, we talked up Kulusevski, but you put him on the bench. You've said Danjuma will start. Just talk to us about your setup, why you've chosen that particular lineup, and equally on top of that, how do you think you can get at Newcastle? Where do you think you can break the lines for us against us?
So yeah, the reason why I didn't pick Longley, if Longley is fit, he will play, but I don't think he's going to be 100% fit. So this has been the conversation with Spurs fans all week, is actually what formation we're going to play.
Okay.
And it's because of the game and how big it is and for the result. I can't see Stellini or anyone else thinking, oh, let's go back to a back four and go for it, because I don't see then who's going to play at left back. Because if Paris, we've got no fit left backs, Porro's the only right back we've got fit. So you can't play. So at the end of the day, who's going to play on that left hand side? So they might have no choice but to play the three, and Tanganga's the only one who can come in. Sanchez is not going to play because of what happened last week.
Yeah, what did you make of that? Just to interrupt that, he got booed off the pitch by the fans.
Yeah, that's actually a couple of people have put that in the questions as well, lads. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, let's leave
let's
that. Go back to that question.
We'll go back to that at the end, and I'll have my opinion on it. But yeah, it's a bit mixed. But yeah, so I was thinking, who else can come in? And I sat there struggling in my head, going, we can't play a four, we can't do this, we can't do that. Yeah. So I went with Tanganga because he's the only made replacement who hasn't been tried at that position, and it's just, why not at the moment? I couldn't then see anyone else coming into midfield, because at the end of the day, we've only got Skip and Højbjerg that are fit. So unless he pushes Kulusevski in midfield, it's not going to happen. And Danjuma scored last week, and it's the only reason why I think he'll play over Kulusevski, because you're not going to drop Kane, you're not going to drop Son. So I think Danjuma.
What about this guy?
again, he came on, missed the chance, and hasn't really played well. So I think they'll keep him on the bench just in case Dan Juma doesn't work. And that's my thinking behind it. Is actually Dan. A lot of the fans have been crying for Dan Juma to play. You can't, especially after getting the equaliser against Bournemouth, you kind of go in. This is his chance now. He's got to play. So if he's going to play, he's going to play on that right hand side. And actually, he's the bit. If Spurs are going to get any joy, it's going to be him up against Dan Burn and his pace. That's the only thing. Yeah, Dan Burn will get ahead of him and beat him in the air. But actually, Porro and Dan Juma on that side is the only thing I can see where we're going to get any joy. Because Perisic will probably get taken further back because of Trippier. Because obviously Trippier's deliveries in the box and everything like that is immense. But the same goes for Perisic. His delivery, he's been off the ball for the last few weeks, but the last few games he's got 2 assists. Now he's another key man for us for corners and everything like that. Perisic will be very key for Kane, and if we're gonna score, it will be from a Perisic assist if Trippier allows him to get forward. And that's what Trippier's got to be careful of, because I've seen Trippier play and I know Trippier can't defend. So as long as we can push him back.
Hold on a second.
Trippier can't defend. He's never been good at it, right? But going forward, Trippier is a threat. And that's why I'm saying if Trippier can push Perisic back, then we're going to be stuck. We're going to be stuck. It is going to be, at the end of the day, it's going to be in midfield where you guys are going to beat us, if it's going to come to anything. But at the same time, Harry Kane, Son, you never know. You just never know with Spurs. And as the stat earlier was pronounced, we do better at St James's Park. And that's why, and you lot do better at our ground. It's just the way it is. And I think if we can catch you quite early on, if we go for it, there's something Martin said earlier, if we go for it, we'll beat you. The problem is Spurs don't go for it. And that's been our issue all season. If we don't go for it and we relax, you lot will get joy. And it's going to be, Almiron's just come back, and I did watch him a bit last week. So I'm a bit like, actually, if he comes, hopefully he does play and he's not fully at the races. Yeah. But it's going to be quite interesting to see. St. Maximum is the one for Spurs fans we're always worried about, because he's unpredictable. And against the Spurs side, being unpredictable, we just can't cope with people like that. We know his final ball's a bit here, there, and everywhere, but actually everything else he does is quite good. It's going to be interesting to see how Isak plays against Dyer, because Dyer is bloody awful. And if he can get any joy, if basically the only way, the way Newcastle are going to get a goal out of Spurs, and I'm gonna, this is honest, Spurs will make a mistake. All our goals, 90% of our goals, 8% of our goals this season have been from mistakes. All the season, even your 2 goals at the lane were down to Longley not being close enough. I can't remember who was playing. I think it was Cess as well, not being close enough to Almiron and just letting him walk through, and then Dyer and Lloris. And if you go and watch any Spurs game this season, every single goal we've conceded has been by an individual error. There's been about 3 or 4, about 10 goals this season where we'll go, oh my God, that was class. But majority of our goals, mistakes. And that's exactly what Newcastle need to do to us. If they put us under pressure, we'll make a mistake.
That brings us on nicely to Mark. I'll come to you, because we have been the kings of making teams making mistakes this season with the high press. So looking at the team that I put on there, this is just my perspective on the lineup. I've gone with Joe Linton on the left. Longstaff hopefully recovering from tonsillitis, getting back into the team as normal, and Miggy Almiron coming back in fully fit on our right hand side. Would you agree with that lineup? Would you change anything? But equally, how do you think we're going to get the better of Tottenham from what you can tell?
I think that team is pretty much what it'll be. I never thought I would hear myself saying this, but my God, we missed Longstaff last week. Because we just had nothing to hold the midfield. We just got played through. I think Bruno, Longstaff, Willock, I think can nail that midfield all day. I think Bruno will watch the runs of Son, which I think maybe cancels that out a fraction. I think Trippier and Almiron if that's the two on that right hand side, we'll push Perisic back. So I think, to take Marlon's piece, I think that kind of takes that threat away. Yes, with Anjuma and Byrne would probably be my slight concern. I would have been more worried if that was Kulusevski, because I think he would probably run Byrne a bit more ragged.
Yeah.
I think if Spurs set up the way that Marlon's put it there with that three at the back, I think Isaac takes the piss, because as much as he's got those goals, he is still an unknown. And I think, Marlon made the point about ASM. Some of the stuff that Isaac is doing currently, even Newcastle fans are looking going, how the hell did he do that?
Yeah.
And I think just his movement in between those lines and getting in behind or coming wide, I think is that unpredictability is there. My only, if I was going to change it, I think, look, we're not 100% sure where ASM is. Does Howe look at that back piece and go, do you know what? One of the things we looked at and we spoke about after the Villa game was, is Dan Burn a little bit burnt out, for want of a better word? He's not looked great the last couple of games, if we're honest.
Yeah.
He's looked leggy. He's made some mistakes. He's, some of the tackles, instead of booting the ball out, the game against Villa, he tried the Cruyff turn and tried to play his way out. He can't do that. He's not that kind of player that can do that. He's not, you just need to sometimes hoof it to row X.
Yeah.
But I think the back four, back five stays the same. Look, we're the meanest defense in the league. We don't concede that many up until obviously Villa. But I think Hell will still go with that tried and tested. Again, we're at St James's, but I think for me, that midfield three, Longstaff, Willock, and Bruno, I think they control that. And I think, from Marlon's perspective about, Spurs coming out, I think after the Aston Villa game and this being at St James's, I think it's the right game at the right time. But I think we come out from the first whistle like an absolute steam train.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if within 35, 40 minutes we're 2-0 up.
Fighting talk from Mark, that is for sure. But equally, I have to say, Mark, when we played Spurs at St James's Park last season, the first game after the takeover, that's exactly what we did, and we took the lead. Callum Wilson got the early goal. It's just that we were so unfit because what Bruce had been doing, a lack of training, that we just fell up. Our
lads were still full of, panda cola and kebabs. We were not at the races.
I think in the run up to that game, I think genuinely, Marlon, this is genuine. In the run up to that game, in the 11 days in the run up to that game, I think we trained 5 days.
Yeah. And three of those where Brucey just put the ball in the middle of the pitch and said, have a kick about, lads. And that's fact.
And we're being genuine with that because we know that to be true. From what's been reported previously, so we started like I said, like a steam train. Exactly what Martin said. He's absolutely
screwed after 35
we were never ever going to be able to continue that for 90 minutes. If we do that on Sunday, we will continue that because that's what we've been doing all season.
Yeah. And I think that's what's seen us see off a lot of teams this season, is that we're just fitter than everybody else.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've been able to keep going.
But that's the one thing. That's the one thing with us, though. We've been able to cope with the fit teams. It has literally been individual errors that have cost us, and that's why I said individual errors. If we create them, like you said, we had Nuno when we played you that time, so we were just as bad as you guys when we beat you 3-2. But with this one, I think if Almiron, if he was to go with Isak and Wilson together, I think it would get more joy out of us. If you could play them, if you can somehow get them playing together and with our defense, and we'll make mistakes. We can't cope with Wilson. We just can't do it. We just haven't got the players to deal with him. And I know Isak's on form, but if there was a way to accommodate both of them, I won't even watch the first half.
You're not the only Tottenham fan that said that.
I would like to see the two of them play together. I think we could, certainly in the next few games,
Especially
think we could actually do a bit more damage with not necessarily a front two. What I would do is I would go, I would have probably Wilson as the main strike, but I would have Isaac in more of a kind of 10 role, but give him that little bit of freedom between the two lines. And I think we could actually do a lot more damage than just playing the one. But I think Eddie will keep that kind of that 4-3-3 system, and unless he needs to change it up and he kind of switches it to more kind of 4 central and that 2 up front then.
Matthew Foster had mentioned that quite rightly.
Yep.
Do you think we'll risk a Wilson and Isaac up front? I do genuinely believe that could be a scenario next season, but we just don't have the alternative to come off the bench, and that's
the problem. If one of them gets injured and both are on,
but it's not even the injury, Mark. You're absolutely right. With one of them could potentially get injured, but if we've got both on by 60 minutes, both are going to be tired. Then what is your
what have we got to change it up? You're looking at Anderson, or you're looking. Do you know what I mean? You're looking at Gordon. You're looking at ASM if he's fit. There isn't really that threat, as much of a threat. There's still a threat, of course, but there's not as much of a threat.
But if you bring one of them on in the second half, you can keep the other one on. So, for example, if Isaac starts and it's not going the way we want, or we're drawing or whatever, we're pushing for the win, bring him on, bring Wilson on, for example, and play both. And then within that, you've got the opportunity that Wilson will be fresh on, he'll be able to buzz around, and Isaac will be able to pick the pockets off the back of that. It's been proven, it's been done before, but starting them both, I don't think we're at
it's definitely happened at some stages of the season, hasn't it, where they've both been on the pitch at the same time and they've linked up well. So I think, I think that might happen at some stage of the game. Early in the second half, about 15 minutes in, Newcastle need, go for that second goal or that third goal. Then bring Wilson on, fresh legs.
Definitely. But look, Keith, just to add to what Mark said, to be fair, is that first of all, do you agree with the lineup? And where do you see, as based on what Marlon said, where do you see us taking advantage of Spurs on Sunday, obviously at St James's Park?
Again, I think it'll be interesting to see sort of like the link up between Almiron and Isak down the wing. Trippier, Almiron, and Isak. Isak, obviously Almiron scored a fantastic, brilliant solo goal at the. I like to keep saying it as the White Hart Lane, but it's the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Brilliant, fantastic goal, and obviously, again, I think defensively, I know that sometimes teams just need to kick up the backside, really. And last week, if we just write off last week, it had been coming because they were awful against Brentford in the first half against Brentford. They obviously had to kick up the backside, get back to what they were doing best and what they've done for most of the season. And Spurs, they could shut Spurs out. I still think obviously Kane might get a chance, but they'll certainly not get the chances they've had in the previous games against Newcastle. And they'll give Newcastle a chance, as Marlon was saying, really, because they have been the defensive Spurs. This season, I'm just sort of, I just can't believe what I'm watching. The amount of mistakes Spurs have made consistently this season. It's almost like they keep shooting themselves in the foot in games, and they actually keep getting themselves back into the top 4, but then they keep shooting themselves back in that foot, really. And it could have been a brilliant season for Spurs, because if you remember when they were earlier in the season, up until they played Tottenham at the it was Tottenham Newcastle at the White Hart Lane. They had a brilliant run to that point where they were undefeated at home, and then Newcastle came and shattered it, and then they just kept on losing games here and there, really. So I think that they will concede, that they will make a mistake or two along the way on Sunday, and that's Newcastle's best chance. Plus, as well, I am more confident, echoing what was said earlier on the show about Longstaff coming back. Sorely missed last week. Both him and Murphy this season have been arguably the most improved players in the Newcastle team under Howe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would
point.
agree with that. Definitely. I've just set up the team like this. I think this is how the team will be potentially set up on Sunday. Son in this little pocket here with Shaw, Botman and Kane. Byrne will be sitting in maybe as a third centre back with Danjuma. Willock will be able to cut off this line here and look after potentially Højbjerg, who actually surprisingly is is the midfielder with the biggest progressive passes of all the midfielders in the team. Which for me, I always saw Højbjerg as a defensive midfielder, but he seems to be the one that's making the most progressive passes for you. So if we cut those lines off with potentially Bruno, Skip and Longstaff in here, but Longstaff to be able to support and cut these lines off here. And then it's about what these boys do. Joe Linton, is he going to cut in from inside or on the left-hand side? Isak making his runs in and around Dyer. An early yellow card will be absolutely spot on with Isak against Dyer, because pace-wise, Isak will leave Dyer for dead. There's no doubt about it. And it's whether Romero can stay on the pitch. And I say that lightheartedly, but there's a genuine chance because Almiron does love to draw a foul, and Romero does love to pick up a card. It's been proven this season. So from a Newcastle perspective, that's kind of how I see the lineup coming about on Sunday. But let's see how it works out. Now we get to this point in the show where we're going to hit Marlon with some questions, and then we're going to get to the predictions. So, Mark, there's a number of questions in there. I don't know if we'll get through them all tonight, but what questions are there to ask?
Yeah.
Marlon?
Okay. So here we go. So first one from Tom Dixon, our regular, and for Marlon, who do you want to be the next Spurs manager?
Don't ask me that question. On paper, I want Nagelsmann. He'll be the perfect fit for Spurs, and what the board are trying to achieve, he can work with what he's got and doesn't need to be bought players. The problem is, I think he's going to go Chelsea. After that, I'll be totally honest, I don't care. It doesn't matter who comes in for Spurs now. This is where Spurs are as fans now. We don't care who the next manager is. It's not going to work out. We've just had 2 serial winners. Didn't work out. You know, Mourinho went to Roma, won a trophy. Where's he not won a trophy? Spurs. Conte will do exactly the same. Pochettino shouldn't come back for his own health. Shouldn't come back. So we're at that stage. And if it's Nagelsmann, it might sneak me back in. But yeah, I have to be totally honest, no one at Spurs cares who the next manager is, because we're at that point where we know it. What's in 18 months, we said this, the same conversations we all had when Conte got sacked on YouTube. We'll just replay them, but replace the name Conte, because the same problems will be exactly the same.
Okay. What do we got next? Question then from Michael Pomar, kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Will Spurs prioritise buying your 3 loan players that came in and will for the summer? Bentancur, Kulusevski and Longley. And if so, where's the money coming from?
So Bentancur's already been bought. So we don't have to worry about that. But you are right about Longley's only going to cost 12 million. But again, we're buying a player that we haven't got a manager. How do we know the manager wants him? Yeah. See, this is Spurs' problem. Kulusevski, you are absolutely right. The outlay of the 40-odd million is there. And there's one more loan signing that we have to pay for as well this summer, I think, which is another outlay. So you're absolutely right. We don't know where the money's going to come from, but we've still got Ndombele, we've still got the Celso and players that I think we've got £202 million worth of talent out on loan. So we have to sell them this summer to recoup. And I tell you now, if Spurs don't sign 2 centre-backs in the summer, 2 decent centre-backs, then it's going to be, Spurs are going to be nothing next year. Absolutely nothing, because Kane's in his last year. Son's rumoured to be Barcelona are sniffing around. It's a bit of a hellhole at the moment. But we've got a new person. We've got a new guy coming in, Scott Munn, coming in to do the football side of things. No one's ever heard of him. He's meant to be taking a lot of it off Levy. So again, we'll see. But yeah, the money. You know, we've got concerts. We've got all that. We've got other stuff going on at the stadium. Football secondary.
few more NFL games should be all right.
Three nights of Beyonce down at the
Exactly.
Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah.
They-
Bit
they
of Garth
haven't got-
Brooks.
They haven't got the permission for the third one yet, but they've sold it out.
Towards the wing. Okay. Gary Milliken, one of our regulars, says, "What do you prefer, the new stadium, or do you prefer what was White Hart Lane?"
Look, White Hart Lane has memories, and I think I answered this question last time. White Hart Lane has massive, massive memories, and I will never forget them. You know, my first game going to Spurs versus Norwich when I was about 4 or 5, I won't forget them. If I'm being honest, the new stadium was needed. It was always going to be needed. And I was at the Arsenal game last season, and it was the first North London derby in front of fans. If Spurs could get that atmosphere, but for majority of our games, a lot of teams would struggle. Like Arsenal struggled that day. It was literally amazing. The new stadium, if anyone's been, is phenomenal. But at the same time, you have to understand football moves on. And it would be like if they tore down St. James's Park and built a state-of-the-art new stadium. Eventually it might have to happen. You just don't know. If you want to move on, the stadium, it has its history, but sometimes you have to, if you want to compete, you need more people coming through the turnstiles, as they say. And actually it create the atmosphere from our South Stand. If anyone has been, it's bloody incredible.
Well, I think eventually they'll do something similar. This ownership will do something similar to St. James's Park, because I think the great thing about Spurs is at least it's near enough on the same site. It's not, they haven't physically moved from the area like a lot of the clubs, like West Ham, for instance. With St. James's Park, I think they'll just rebuild it, the whole lot eventually, and it'll look completely different in 15, 20 years' time.
Definitely.
Okay.
You can't take St. James's Park out of the city. It's wonderful. I loved it when I went.
Okay, I think this one's a bit of a sideways joke from Michael Pomar. Says, "Why did you pick Spurs over Arsenal or any other club local to you? Do you bang your head on the wall often because of that decision?"
So really funny enough. So I'm from the east side of London. So actually my choice was West Ham.
Oh, wow.
Or Tottenham. So what had happened was my first ever game was someone took me to a Spurs game, and it's kind of like I've never looked back. Now that person, I could actually smack their head up against the wall and say, "Why'd you make me support Spurs?" But yeah, between Spurs and West Ham, there's no other choice. But trust me, the way I am, I could never have been an Arsenal fan growing up. I'm just not that way inclined. Trust me, if you guys were to live near Arsenal fans, you'd hate them as much as... This is the first time I've ever known people want Man City to win the league. They're going to be unbearable. On YouTube, in London, they're going to be an unbearable fan base if they win.
So many people have said it, Marlon. Honestly,
they're going to be worse than Liverpool.
You're not the only one. And like the amount of opposition fans, whether it's Liverpool, Man United, Man City, whether it's Chelsea, there's so many fan bases that are coming out and saying like how unbearable the Arsenal fans are being right now, and actually are basking in the glory of the fact that they've had back-to-back draws and could potentially throw it away. They are literally like rubbing their hands together. We don't see it as much as you do, because you're down there, you see it on a regular basis. But Arsenal fans have been known to be unbearable. I'm lucky the Arsenal fans that I know are quite respectful.
To be fair to them, right? I can openly admit this: the football that they have played this season has been incredible and actually deserved to win the league, but because it's Arsenal, I can't have it.
Okay, what have we got? I'm just trying to, there's a few here similar. Well, first, before I get into another one, we'll just pop this up just as a reminder. Me and Pete were actually talking about this before we came on air. Next weekend, me, Pete, all the boys, we are in Newcastle for the weekend. Me and Daz fly in from Dublin on Saturday morning, the 29th. The lunchtime or early afternoon, we are having a charity six-a-side game in aid of the Gated Food Bank. Donations can be made. We'll leave the link in the chat. It's also on our Twitters. It's also on YouTube, all the other bits and pieces. But it's Loaded Mag against Newcastle Fans TV. It's going to be a good laugh. There's a huge chance that me and Daz will pass out because I'm way too old to be bloody running around. But it's for a really good cause. So we're going to meet up with the lads from Newcastle Fans TV. We're going to have a bit of fun, bit of crack, a couple of beers afterwards. So if you are kicking around the afternoon of the 29th, we'll get the times and stuff out for you in the next week or so.
Kick off 12 o'clock. That's
12
all
o'clock.
we need to know. Kick off
Okay.
12 o'clock.
Kick off is 12 o'clock. So get up to the foundation. Come and watch us. If you know mouth to mouth or any of those things, absolutely attend. If you're a paramedic by trade, then please come and be my best friend for that 1 hour, because there's a huge chance I won't make the flight on Monday back home. But yeah, we're going to have a good laugh. And then again, I suppose following off the back of that, we're in Newcastle for the full weekend. We are at the Southampton game. We will be kicking around Saturday night. Me and the boys are out for a little bit of dinner. But we will be around. I think we can probably say, can we? I think we've kind of semi-organized. So yeah, once we've had a bit of dinner, anybody, if you do want to pop down and have a pint with us, we will be in the Aiken side, down by the quayside, from about 8:30, 9 o'clock on Saturday evening, the 29th. So if you want to come down, you want to meet up with me and the boys, come down, share a bevy or two, and tell a few stories and meet up. Come down and see us, and then we'll see the rest of you at the game. Okay, next question from Lisa, our regular spanner. Where would you be happy to finish this season, mate?
Okay, very controversial, but I don't want to get the Champions League spot. It makes no difference to Spurs if we get it or not. It's nice to. What's the point of getting Champions League if you watched our game at home against AC Milan? We're 1-0 down. We're probably the only side in history to defend a 1-0 defeat. You know, this is what Spurs was like. And I think for Spurs right now, we need to take a step out of the Champions League, because I think that's what was our problem last year. Because we didn't get it, because we got it, we then went, we can't invest heavily and this, that, and the other. And it caused a lot of issues behind the scenes. Yeah. But at the same time, we can't be out of Europe, just in case we have a turn. And we need to keep the coefficient points. So for me, I'll take the Europa League spot. I don't really want a conference. I don't really, the Conference League is not. I'm not ready for that. But I'll take a Europa League spot, 5th or 6th, and I'll be quite happy with that.
Okay. Kind of Tom was asking similar, so that's kind of asked that. Gary Milliken, then next one says, due to financial fair play, does Marlon think that Daniel Levy will be dry?
It's quite funny because this question came up on the thing when he went to Cambridge University, and he's been fighting for years to get this sustainability in clubs, and especially since you guys got taken over, he's pushed it forward. Now, if you remember correctly, Pep Guardiola came out of a comment and said, "Why are you asking me? Go and ask Daniel Levy." Right? So there's a reason behind this. A lot of the stuff that the Premier League are pushing through, Daniel Levy has a lot of say in. And you've got to remember, he's the longest serving person on this panel now. He's been there longer than anyone else. And a lot of the clubs are looking at him because he's created a club, not won anything, but look how much money he's making. And he's been able to do it. And let's be honest, where we've got Chelsea and Arsenal in London, you've got Manchester United and Liverpool, the big clubs outside as well. And he's managed to break, I think we're like the 4th highest revenue. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think if FFP comes in, Daniel Levy seems to think it will make it a level playing field. It won't, because what Spurs will do is just literally sign the wrong players still. It's just ingrained in us because it's not like we haven't spent the money. But yeah, Daniel Levy is pushing for it, especially since you guys got taken over. So just watch this space, because he said, I think there's new rules coming out this summer regarding it, and that's what he mentions in this. There's new rules. He's pushing, he's trying to get it out there. He's trying to make all clubs not rely on money brought in elsewhere.
Right. Interesting.
Okay. What have we got? I think we did this one, but it was just a shout out. Pete, I think it was for you, for little Jimmy Green.
Yeah, we gave the shout out earlier. Mags on top, thanks for joining us.
Yep, no worries. Yep. And Jimmy, we are watching. Okay, Tom Dixon with another one. There's probably a few more with this, but we'll get the question out. Who do you think is Newcastle's main threat to Spurs on Sunday?
I still think Callum Wilson is. I think I'm really hoping he doesn't start. I think we can cope with Isak a little bit better. I know he's on form, but with the way Spurs play, we can cope with him. Where with Wilson, we just can't cope with him at all. But if the threat's going to come from anywhere, and as I said earlier, it's going to be from Trippier on the right-hand side, keeping Perisic back, and whoever plays with Trippier, because if it's not Almiron, it might be, it could be anybody, Murphy. Yeah. But whoever's on that side is going to be very key to what happens. Keep Perisic back, can't defend, make Trippier deliver some balls into that box, and yeah, that's where I think your main threat's going to be.
Okay. Quick little follow-up one from Tom. Tom's firing questions in. Well, and really good question, to be fair. Marlon, what do you think of VAR so far this season?
So for me, I like VAR. I
bet you do.
No.
We don't.
No.
After Brighton, I bet you do.
I'm going to say this, and this is what I've always said about VAR. The problem that we have as fans with VAR is that we're judging it on it to be 100% accurate. You're never going to get 100% accuracy when you've got English referees making the decisions, because it's still a human, right? Because at the end of the day, we can all see what's gone wrong.
Yeah.
But they make a decision and you're like, really? But if you look at how many decisions were wrong before VAR compared to now, it's improved. I think as a fan base, the two things that frustrate us is how long it takes. And if they're doing it on clear and obvious, I've always said, if it's clear and obvious, you should be able to do within 60 seconds, know whether that decision or not. We can see it when we're watching TV. Why can't the refs? Right? Yeah. So if you give it a minute, and if they can't get it within the minute and they're like, look, it's inconclusive, it goes with the on-field decision. It will stop all of that. The only thing that's been 99% accurate is the offside. There's no matter which lines you draw, some of the lines have been terrible this season, but you look at the way it's done in the World Cup, you look at the way it was done in the Euros, weren't many problems. But as soon as you hand it to an English referee in the Champions League, or you hand it to an English referee, all the problems lie. We have got to improve our standard of refereeing here, and I think that's what needs to happen first before we start judging VAR. And forget last weekend, you look at the game against Southampton, they gave a penalty and you were like, really? It wasn't a penalty. And then if that penalty doesn't happen, Conte doesn't get sacked, or vice versa, because he doesn't come out of the comments, we win the game 3-2. But yeah, the problem, I like VAR, I just wish it weren't in the hands of English referees. I bet you any money, if we got an outsourced it, we as fans we wouldn't be complaining about it as much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like the idea of VAR, but I think there's too many indecisions and too many reading between the lines.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, that needs to be resolved. I think Howard Webb's got a massive job to do at PGMOL. I think that there's a huge disconnection. And I think the other key thing for me, and I've said, Pete, you know this, I've said this season upon season, the last 2-3 years, go the same way as the likes of the NFL, go the same way as the rugby, and mic the referees up so we can hear what's being talked about. Yeah. I know you might have TV where you get the odd little bit of cursory language, and you know what? It happens. It's live. It's sport. But I watch, Pete knows, I watch a lot of rugby. I go to a lot of rugby games where the ref is mic'd up and you're watching replays and you're hearing the call, why stop play, why there's a foul, what's in the decision. Then it's looked at on the screen. Yeah, okay, it might take a little bit more time, but at least the fans know what the hell is going on. And I think that frustration for us, if you look at some of the calls we've had, and you look at the high foot against Man United, Bruno Fernandes, no penalty. Isak puts a half a foot up in the Brentford game. It's a penalty after 5 minutes of checking. So it's that frustration. I think if the refs were mic'd up and there was a bit more, there was a bit more openness, I think you get more fans buying into it. Whereas a lot of fans now are just going, this is shit. It's ruining the game. But Keith, that's my take on it.
Just before we move on, Keith, what are your thoughts on VAR?
Well, I think Martin hits on some really good points there. Certainly, I remember years ago, like 20 years ago, watching the Super Bowl. I think it might have been the Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake one, but that was the first time I watched Super Bowl, and I was seeing there, and I I was just sort of like looking at it and wondering, and even though it slowed the game up, I was watching, and one thing I observed was how much more the players actually respected and responded better to the referees, because he was explaining everything. He was justifying his decisions there and then. And it's almost like with certainly in the Premier League and football, it's sort of like hidden. It's all cloak and dagger. It doesn't get explained more. And I think another thing that got us thinking there, from what Martin was saying there as well, about the approach in rugby union and certainly American NFL football. If you look at the Premier League, we seem to have like the best in class for a lot of things, which makes us the best league. And the fact we've got so many different teams competing for this top 6, which is becoming top 8, but we don't have the best in class for the referees. We don't have the best player. We have the best players. We have some of the best managers who've managed here, but we don't have the best referees. If you remember back in the day, Pierluigi Collina was one of the best referees. He was in Serie A. So how come we don't actually have, and we don't have a transfer window or anything where different referees can come over? Some of the best referees in the world can come over and referee in the English Premier League and make the Premier League money. Why not? Why can't that be an option maybe in the future? Because if it makes our game better, because the sums of money you're talking about now, where teams can win, lose Premier Leagues, teams can win and lose Champions League, and get relegated. If we had that option where we could have some of the best referees in the world come over to the UK, it would just make our product so much better, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think,
and that's the interpretation of VAR as well.
I think if you take that back, any of these discussions, I always take it back to the rugby piece, which is, if you look at the Six Nations, you've a mix of referees that referee other countries. But if you look at, rugby as a whole, referees interchange from country to country. There's no set kind of book of officials. There is a set of referees for the Rugby Premiership, and the European Cup and others, and they all intermix. They could be different countries, different weeks. They fly in and out. And I don't get why between, say, Spanish League, the French League, the Italian League, and the Premier League, why can't we do the same and have that flip around? But look,
I've got another question. I've got another point I'd just like to ask, just, looking ahead to the future, 10, 15, 20 years into the future. You said there earlier, Marlon, it's a human making the decision. Do you think in 10, 15, 20 years, it could actually be AI who makes the decision, makes that call?
Yeah, probably. And probably that's the route that it will eventually go down, and it'll be like watching FIFA, like playing FIFA, but actually watching it, because it will be the AI doing it. And I think eventually we'll go down that route. But yeah, for the time being, it's got to be the quality of the refs. It has basically got to change, because if that doesn't change, you're not going to get. You could take VAR away, and we'll be moaning about the decisions that we were before. Just go back to Charlie Austin's rant before VAR came in.
Yeah,
that nearly cost Southampton so much, and it was such an easy thing. But you go back to our game last week and the penalty decision, and you're going, he's trod on his foot. How are you not giving that as a penalty? Even Spurs fans sitting there going, well, you've got that one well wrong. But then you look at the goal that was scored, the one that was handball. You've got to take the rough with the smooth at the end of the day with VAR. But without the quality to referee the games, you're still going to have the same issue, and you'll still have the arguments down the pub. And that's what it hasn't taken away. It still hasn't taken away the argument down the pub after the game going, I can't believe they got that wrong. It still happens. It's going to happen. But I think the problem is everyone thought when VAR came in, it was going to be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And you can't judge VAR on that. If you're going to judge VAR on that, why can't you then judge when VAR's not there? You look at the Championship and League One. They are moaning week in, week out about the decisions their referees making. So, you've got to then look, it's not just a Premier League problem. It's across the board in England where our referees are just that bad. And that's the bit that's got to change. And with all the money in the game, like you said, why are we not at the top?
Yeah, No, absolutely. Okay, couple more quick ones, and then we'll get into predictions. Just wanted to throw this up. Quick one from Gary. He says he thinks that Marlon, you should do the team talk.
They,
So that's
they won't listen to me.
probably not a bad idea.
Well, hold on. The team talk after Sunday.
Yeah, after Sunday.
Surely.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. For every other game, yes, Marlon could do it, but not for this weekend. We'll put Lisa's question up as the last one and kind of leave this with the last question. Few people have asked the same thing. Is Kane going at the end of the season?
Great question. Great question.
Lisa, it's an absolute brilliant question. If you've got 120 million pounds to part with,
that
he's
much?
yours. Yeah,
You
that
left
much.
on his contract, Marlon.
Yeah.
Hang on. I think let's just go back. We're only talking about Kane, not Kane and Son.
No.
Let's not get confused now, Marlon.
No. So again, you have to go and watch this thing that Daniel Levy did and on the Cambridge Union. So he was asked exactly the same question. Tottenham have a price for him, and you've got to remember he's worth 120 million pounds to us. Yeah, he's not worth 120 million pounds to the rest of the country. He's thinking he's got a year left on his contract. He's got this. He's got an ankle injury and this, that, and the other. He's worth 120 million pounds to us. So that includes his contract, what he's got left, and it includes what he might bring us if he stays for the season. But at the same time, Kane has ambitions, and I won't begrudge him from going. But who's going to pay to get him out of Spurs?
Yeah.
Manchester City seems to be off the table now.
Yeah.
He's not going. He's not going to go Chelsea because of the London rivalry, and he's not going to go Arsenal. So that leaves you with Manchester United. Manchester United are the only club that right now that are probably going to pay it. And if you look at them right now, they've got Weghorst up front, so you can tell it's a short-term project. It all depends on who Man United go for in the summer. If they want Harry Kane and they want to do it now, they will go get him. If not, then Kane stays at Spurs.
I think it's between Kane. This is for Man United, by the way. I think it's either Kane or Victor Osimhen. If you're me or Mart, we would go for Victor Osimhen.
We would, yeah.
Mart's a big fan. We've watched him. We'll see what he does at Napoli. Yeah. He's a top striker.
Savage.
But I think Man United will feel pressure from the club to go for Harry Kane because he's the English star boy. And that is what Man United have been built on in years gone by. They've been able to buy
and you know what, Pete,
from this country.
If Man United go for Kane, that is their fix because they did
some next level.
Shearer.
Yeah.
It takes them next level, and it could bring them closer to pushing City. Certainly that missing link, Kane and Rashford up front. And you're right what you say in terms of they've always, even though he was more converted into a midfielder, Alan Smith, and then after that, Wayne Rooney, and how good Wayne Rooney was all those years breaking that record of Sir Bobby Charlton.
I can't explain to you like how good Kane is, but I'll just put this out there. If Haaland wasn't having the season that he had, and you look at how Spurs are doing, just look at Kane's numbers this season. They are phenomenal. And I mean, for any striker to be pushing Haaland the way and Haaland's in a Manchester City team where he's getting chances created every week. Kane's in a team where we're struggling to create chances and our defense is poor. But yet he's still producing numbers at his age as well that in the Premier League, I tell you now, if he doesn't catch Shearer's record, he'll be very close.
Yeah. Tell you one thing though, Haaland could catch it.
I know, yeah.
If he stays in the UK.
Exactly.
I think he's picked his clubs already. He's kind of said, "This is my path," and I think it'll either be Real Madrid. Real Madrid will be his next club.
There's almost like a little bit of the Ronaldo about Haaland, really, where Ronaldo wanted to be the best in the UK, best in Spain, best in Italy, etc., etc. It's a similar path with Haaland.
I don't see Haaland breaking the record purely for that reason. Like Cristiano Ronaldo stayed in the Premier League, he'd have probably had the record beaten, like before he was even 30. But the fact the fact that he moved on created the opportunity for others to kind of get close to it. For me, I think I've got to be honest. I think it's either Man United or Bayern Munich for Harry Kane. I don't think Sadio Mane stays next season, particularly after what happened in the Champions League fight and all the rest of it. I think he gets sold on, and they get Harry Kane to be the main man. I think that's one option, or he goes to Man United. If I'm honest with you, if you're Daniel Levy, and we know Daniel Levy to be the type of person that he is, he sells him to Bayern Munich. I think there's some sort of agreement there that he goes this summer, but I genuinely think that he says, right, we'll sell you, but you don't
go to a rival.
Yeah.
That's massive, that though, because can you actually see Harry Kane at the time of life he is with his young family and that? Can you actually see him going to another country with another language like Germany as well, learning language as well?
I think
it's not that far away from London.
Yeah. And do you know what, Keith? I think he may not have many options.
Yeah,
as mad as that sounds, I don't think
options.
He'll have that many options because
for
of
the money. For the money that he's offered, but the one thing is that they've got Thomas Tuchel that's come in, and although they've had a really rough start, Thomas Tuchel is a fantastic tactical manager. And the one thing that's already been talked about is that he absolutely loves Harry Kane. He loves him.
And Bayern are an absolute machine, aren't they? Bayern are an absolute machine.
He would score goals in that league. And he'd score goals for that team. But
he would smash records in that league. He'll play until 35, 36 and beyond in Bundesliga and will smash records. There's no doubt.
Look at Thomas Muller.
Exactly. You look at Lewandowski. He will do what Lewandowski will do and smash records.
Look at what Robin did when Robin left Chelsea to go over to Germany. It was phenomenal.
Exactly. Okay, we've kind of done a good chunk of questions. Thanks to everyone sending. Didn't get through them all. There was a lot that were kind of similar. So a couple of little bits I just want to shout before we get to predictions. It looks like, unfortunately, Pete, Man United are going out because they're now 2-0 down to Sevilla. A second goal from Leuchbade. So they're 2-0 down, now 4-2 on aggregate, and it's 63 minutes played. And then I just wanted to give a shout out to this fella, PDK. Listen, mate, he's dropped a note there to say he won't be with us on Saturday because he's starting his chemotherapy treatment next week. Listen, fella, love and hugs and thoughts are with you. Be safe, my friend. We will see you at another point. We will have a beer for you Saturday when we're over there, and we'll give a good cheer on Sunday when we're at the match that following week. So listen, keep strong, fella. You're in our thoughts. So love from everybody at Loaded. And I'm sure anybody that's in the chat and everything else, I can see loads of stuff. So good luck, pal. Keep the chin up, and you know where we are. You can drop a DM or text us, boys, anytime you want to, mate. So be strong, keep safe, fella.
Yeah, big follower, PDK.
Yeah, he's massive.
We really
his crack in the chat is really, really good. So,
for the
my thoughts are with you, fella. All right, predictions, Pete.
Predictions. Look, Mott, we're going to start with you. So, what do you think the score is going to be on Sunday evening? We're going to start with you. We're going to work our way around. Go for it, my
man. I am feeling confident. I am going to go with a Stu Penman special. I'm going to go 3-1 win to Newcastle, and I think we will be coming out like a steam train. 3-1. I think, unfortunately, Kane will probably score because he always bloody does against us. But I think 3-1, and I think Botman will get his first goal in a black and white shirt. There you go. Because I think, and I've said this numerous times, we need to get more bloody goals from our defenders. The height we've got, we don't score enough. But I think against this Spurs defence, and Dyer in particular, get those balls whipped in, get some free kicks in there. Trippier's delivery, I think we can really pile the pressure on Spurs. And as Marlon said, cement that fourth spot. So, yeah, I've got 3-1.
Massive. Look, Marlon, we're going to come to you as the opposition fan. Look, what are you thinking the result wise against Newcastle on Sunday?
So it goes to my starting lineup depending on what the result. If Tanganga plays, we've lost. But if Sanchez does play, and I don't think he will, but if Sanchez or Longley does play, I think we'll get a draw. I think it will be 2-2. Kane will score and probably will score a penalty. I think we'll get a penalty, and I think Son will score. But I know we just can't keep clean sheets, and with Isak on form and everything like that, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2-1 to us and you lot score in the last 10 minutes to make it 2-2.
Okay, there you go. 2-2.
Go for the old Desmond.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to stick to my Davey special. I'm going to stick to Newcastle to win 2-1. I think, you know what? I think Miguel Almiron is going to be on the score sheet on Sunday. I do think that he's going to add to his tally. He's proven this season that he can play against Tottenham. That's for sure. Look, so yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for a win. So I've gone for a win. Mark's gone for a win. From a Newcastle perspective, obviously Marlon's gone for the draw. But here we have the main man, Jaws, to chomp up all the positivity of Newcastle United. What to do is
come on, Splinter, put us out of our misery.
Splinter's here to show us the way. Look, in all seriousness, Keith, Double O Stato, the main man, what do you think is going to be the score line on Sunday?
Well, there's going to be lots of goals, that's for sure. I think in this one, I think the two are just going to go at it, really, to go. They know what's at stake. It's Champions League football. Spurs have got some tricky games coming up after this as well. So, I think this one, it could be. I mean, Newcastle have proven in April over previous seasons, they've pulled out brilliant results. Remember the one against Arsenal, 2-1. And 2-0 last year. Can you remember against Chelsea all them years ago with Sir Bobby, 2-1 with that brilliant goal from Alan Shearer? So they can do it, but will they do it? And I think there's going to be loads of goals in here. They haven't been great against Spurs over the years, and I think this could be a thrilling draw, 3-3 or even 2-2.
He's gone for a draw.
He's gone for a draw.
But listen, it's not a 1-1. It's not a 1-1. I've said 2-2. Because I think Kane will score. He'll score at least once. And I think the confidence will be a bit knocked off last Saturday with that hammering off Aston Villa. But I think it'll be a thrilling draw.
We're at home. We're at home though, Keith.
Yeah.
I did say it could be.
You know what? I'm not even going back to the chat because I know, I can see the comments jumping in my screen.
I did say it was going to be 2-1. I did say
Stano's getting hammered in the chat, so I'm not going back.
It could be a 2-1. It could be a 2-1, but I think this has got goals written all over it. It's a really tough game to call.
You've got an Arsenal fan in the chat. Mark Taylor is going, sack him. Get him out of here.
Sack him.
I tell you. Some man. Right.
There you go.
So there you have it.
There are predictions. Let's see how it all pans out. But look, just before we go, we have to say a huge thanks to all of our sponsors. Huge thanks to the Radiator Shed. Thank you for all your support. Russ is working hard, very hard, behind the scenes with all things.
He is, yeah. Hopefully we get to see him next week for beer.
Definitely. I think we will. I think he'll be available. That's for sure. Keith definitely needs to be behind bars after his prediction today. And Marlon,
flaming out there
as the resident away fan. But of course, with the Radiator Shed, they have aluminium rads that are environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They offer a home survey service and will install if required, and all designs are manufactured in Italy. And you just see some of the designs that are available, all different colors and all very, very good top level quality. That is for sure. And just look, we have to say a massive thanks to everyone. Our other sponsor at the Bathroom Designs, H2O, the Northeast's largest suppliers for Villeroy and Bosch bathroom wear. The Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, ran by the family. So make sure you get down to the showrooms on the 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate in Gateshead, and make sure and look. some fantastic designs in here, fantastic bathrooms that they put together. So make sure you get involved in that as well, working alongside Russ and his team too. Of course, if you haven't become a member, and you should do, because we're going to be doing a members draw this weekend, so keep an eye on that as well. It just takes a second. Click that blue button, but you have to be on laptop. You can't do it on your phone to be able to become a member. Click that blue button. It's $1.99 a month. The prize draws are coming on Sunday and they come monthly. So keep your eye on all of those that come your way, and make sure you become a member. We've had a number of members join us for the first time this week. So thank you to all your members that have joined us and become a part of the Loaded family. Thank you.
Join up and get in the chat. That's what
Definitely.
the crack is.
Get in the chat. Click those likes before you leave tonight. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We're under 700 away, hitting towards a 6K target. So we're moving nicely, slowly but surely.
And that's before we have a drink next Saturday.
And that is before. Yeah, I worry about.
I'm worried about the state we're going to be in. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
worried I'm going to admit.
The wife's not here.
It's not going to be good.
It's going to be all right. It's going to be nice and comfortable. I don't believe it's going to be at all. But yeah,
my missus just said, "Do not even ring me if you're pissed when you're over there." So she's already ripped me off, mate. I haven't even got on a plane yet. So, yeah,
I worry about you returning up to the football.
I know.
You and Daz are going to be on the flight over.
I know. Our flight's like 7 a.m. And he said, like, "Are you going to drink?" And I was like, "Dude, if I'm not putting a picture up on Facebook of my passport and a pint, I'm not getting on a plane." So yeah, I may just have the one. We just got to give a quick shout out here, Mary, new member. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining. You're very, very welcome. Okay, that's it.
Right, boys, this is it. Marlon, absolute pleasure as always.
No, thank you for having me on. I love this. I love doing this channel. I have so much fun on it, and I'm not that bad for a Cockney geezer. Come on, people, I'm not that bad. but make sure anyone Newcastle fans, make sure you subscribe to this channel. This channel is brilliant. Yeah, and if you want to come and see what my fans are like on Sunday, my channel's going live. It's called A View from the South Stand TV. If you want to see what we're like as Spurs fans, then I'm probably the most decent one we've got. But just come and see the reaction after we get beat. But besides that, brilliant channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. These guys are good, and I love coming on. I have so much fun.
Cool. Mike, I think Michael sums it up, Marlon, before we finish up. Says, "Thanks so much to Marlon. Very nice guy. Made a stupid mistake as a kid by following Spurs. Still a smile on your face. Thanks for lending your time. We really appreciate the insight. We do. So listen, thanks very much from me and Pete. Thanks for coming on.
Spot on. Double O Stato, Jaws, Splinter, whatever.
Dr. Doom.
Keith, absolute legend. Thank you for your stats. Always spot on and well sourced. So really, really appreciate that. And hopefully look forward to potentially bumping
seeing you. I presume you're coming out for a pint, Stato, when we're over, are you?
Yeah. I know the Aikenside trailers very well. So
very good, man. We will see you there for beverages.
Get in there. Great stuff. So we'll have plenty of chats, plenty of stats. No quizzes, by the way, because we know one man below me will be winning outright. That's for sure. But look, thank you all for joining the chat. Brilliant show tonight. Absolutely loved it. And of course, we do love playing away, guys and girls. How do you like that?
How do you like that?